In this episode of SENSimilla, we'll be chatting with Andrew Ward. He's written for such publications as High Times, Benzinga, Business Insider, and Rolling Stone magazine. His first book, Cannabis Jobs, can you see it? Was released in 2019 and is available on Amazon. We will link it below. His new book, Marijuana Etiquette, has just come out, also available at Amazon or through Simon and Schuster. Andrew, thanks for being here. Welcome, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah. Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being on. Always great to talk to you.
Yeah,
Feel like we've
I'm
known each other for a good while in cannabis.
totally. I was just gonna say, like, it's fun to come back to some of these conversations with people who, uh, have been doing it as long, if not a little longer than I've been doing it, kind of in the industry, and just parallel the thing, and check in and be like, "Hey, man, you still alive in there? You good? You cool?
Yeah,
How you
yeah.
doing?" And then every
Yeah.
so often, I see a book drop, and I'm like, "Yeah, my guy's doing it."
Yeah, man. Thanks. It's awesome. I appreciate you've always reached out whenever you've had clients that might be of someone I can help out with or link up with. It's always great getting those sort of connections from people. So, that support has always been awesome. I know we kind of first started out working in branding, kind of similar on the same side of things, and
Right.
then, branching out both of us over the years. But it's cool to see
Trying
those as
to
the core.
apply our artistic nerdiness to this thing that we love so much, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, with writing, that was kind of why I got into it because I was just like, hey man, there's not a lot of people that know the business side of it, and I know that. And I've never called myself a journalist, but I think I can put a journalist hat on pretty well. So it's like,
Oh yeah,
if you could strike a balance between those two things, you can be pretty beneficial.
absolutely. And we're gonna get there. I ask. This is the fourth time I've asked this season, but I've been asking it to all of my Jersey guests. You're
Mhm.
in New York City now. Taylor ham or pork roll?
I mean, it's pork roll. It's 100%
All
pork
right,
roll.
Southern Jersey, Southern
Yeah,
Jersey. We got to
I
so Zach, my CMO, will be very happy. I think you're maybe. I don't think. I think we've been having some Northern Jersey people mostly come in, but it's okay.
well, I mean, it's reading. It's not that hard. It's the label says pork roll on Taylor brand
It
pork
does.
roll, and then it says doesn't say Taylor ham on pork roll
Not
or
a single
anything
person.
else. So I mean, if you're being pragmatic about it, I just think people are too tied up in their emotions. They just need to see the reality of it.
Just just face facts, people. Face facts.
It's
Uh,
essentially like cannabis legalization. You just have to come around to what the facts are.
Everybody's got a name for it somewhere. It's call it one thing, tomato, tomato. My
Yeah.
mother-in-law, speaking of, the only person I've ever met in my life, and I've been to London, to say tomato.
Yeah, I don't
Who
like that.
knows? Me
That's
neither.
that's well,
She's
what is
great.
it?
Otherwise, she's great.
As
But
long as no one
tomato,
says potato, as long as she doesn't say potato.
trust me, this is the debate that she and I have. Um,
I,
I am fascinated by the journey of an author. I romanticize the projection of Hunter, Hemingway, Kerouac, ironically, all ending not so romantically. So I'm not putting that on you. But there's key elements to an author's journey. And I don't necessarily mean the self-destructive parts of it. Again, I mean just experiencing life, the importance of experience. What do you think about that?
yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. I think it's kind of, I have a good case of imposter syndrome because I didn't
Mhm.
follow the path of those writers in any way. My publisher reached out to me to get these books started. So, even just the way of how they went about getting those books are completely different. But, I think experience and, the path is, basically what shapes everyone. And especially
Mhm.
anytime you're in a creative field, those experience, good, bad, negative, indifferent, they all kind of help shape you. And
Mhm.
you just got to know how to use them and harness them and, kind of channel them into using that in your creativity.
Sure.
I would definitely love to
Research and
follow.
creativity are like the primary things there, but your experience has to then shape all of that into, you know, whatever you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to apply it or you haven't had the experiences to shape it, you really won't be able to know how to implement it properly.
Right.
So yeah, you have to go through it all. And yeah, I would love to follow the Kerouac path and all the classic writers and all that sort of stuff. But
Just
maybe that'll go a different
without the
route.
grisly, terrible endings for all of them.
Yeah, but I mean, again, a lot of them drank and I smoke pot, so I don't know. I feel like there's a difference already there.
Yeah, big time, big time. Your bio mentions that an early inspiration for you were horror movies,
Mhm.
and that's what inspired you to write. It's kind of funny because horror is what inspired me to dance. I saw Thriller in
Ah,
1985, and I just wanted to dance, Andrew.
I love it. I
I
love it,
couldn't
man.
do it. I have horror movie PTSD. I am like terrible with horror. The okay, let me pull this one out of complete randomness. There is a Disney horror movie,
Mhm.
like live action. I think it's probably from like maybe 1980 or like the late 70s or something. It's called The Watcher in the Woods, and I don't even think it's a horror movie. It's like a Disney horror movie. Do you know this movie?
It sounds familiar, but I can't recall it off the
Okay,
top of
let
my
me
head.
paint a picture for you.
Let's hear
Okay,
it.
so the game, so it's this group, these little kids, and they have a game called The Watcher in the Woods. And again, I haven't seen this since I was 6, but it's completely ruined my life. I'm 41 and I'm talking to you about it. So the plot is these kids go into some church in the middle of the woods, and they put a blindfold on. Some little girl puts a blindfold on, and they start doing the Watcher in the Woods chant or whatever. And the church bell falls on this girl, and she now haunts the woods. But this girl, and she looks like maybe Alice in Wonderland or something like that, right? She's a little girl, blue dress, whatever. But she's
Mhm.
got this blindfold on, and this girl terrified me my whole life. With the
Okay.
you haven't seen that one?
I haven't, but I'm feeling like this kind of is like the Are You Afraid of the Dark shows that I had as a kid, where it's
It's
like kid
probably like
horror.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's like
kid
kid
horror.
horror. If I watch
Yeah.
this movie today, I'd be like, what a baby I
Oh yeah.
was. But this
I
little girl. But I'm curious how horror kind of like what was the connection there for you?
definitely wasn't that for me. I loved horror right out the jump. I loved getting scared. E.T. was the first thing that gave me a scare. I didn't know.
Uh,
I honestly thought he was a big piece of poop as a 3-year-old, and I
that's
was just
hilarious.
afraid. And then I was just like, oh, he's not. He's a cool dude. All right. And I embraced like the monster. And my cousin, on the
What's
other
the
hand,
scariest scene in that movie?
oh, there isn't one in ET. I mean, maybe
Oh,
when
there
he's like,
definitely is one.
no. I mean, when the government comes after ET,
That's the
maybe.
one. That's the
Yeah, I mean,
scene when they're all
yeah,
in the
okay, okay.
house.
Fair for fair. Okay, yeah. Because I was thinking of the moment when he was like first giving him the M&M or the Reese's Pieces, and the fingers
Uh-huh.
come out. And as a kid, I was like, that was scary for a minute. Then I was like, oh, he's
That
a
is
cool dude.
scary. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, definitely the feds. You're right. You're right. The feds are.
Feds, they've
I mean,
always been scaring us.
I mean, yeah. Even if it's not a horror film, when the feds are involved, it's typically going to be a horror scene.
It's always gonna be
Um,
scary.
yeah, man. But those movies were definitely like kid horror films were fun. There's a movie called Little Monsters. I don't know if you
Oh
remember
yeah,
with
for
Fred
sure.
Savage.
Definitely. Was Howie Mandel in that?
Yeah, Howie Mandel was
Wow.
the monster. And my cousin Phil was absolutely terrified of that movie. And me and his little brother, who like is kind of like my favorite cousin now, we just laughed at him the whole time. It was like, you're afraid of this movie. It was like it's a comedy. And he was just terrified of Howie Mandel. And it was just yeah, I love
Howie
kid
Mandel's
movies like
frightening.
that. I mean, I guess. I don't know. I mean, he's a
America's Got
germaphobe,
Talent,
which
man. Yeah, yeah.
he's
You're
more scared of the
bald.
world than he's more scared of the world than we are of him. So or we
Definitely.
should be of him, I guess.
Um. So I mean, you loved them. You wanted to write them.
Yeah, I mean, I so the first horror movie that actually got me into want to write was Scream, the Wes Craven
Oh yeah.
movie.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I saw that when I was like 10, 11, and I was like,
Mhm.
I could write this. And not in a cocky way, but I was like, I could do this. This seems like a pretty simple story to write, like,
Sure.
monsters.
It's
And I would just
formulaic.
write, yeah, and I wrote very terrible stories for the next like 10 years trying to craft stuff. And I did screenplays, and sometimes they were horror, sometimes they weren't, but horror always kicked it off. Horror is still my favorite genre. During COVID, I basically dove into horror and documentaries more than anything. So I picked up a nice amount of B and C horror films, as well as revisiting a lot of like classics from the old days that I haven't seen in a few years. And yeah, I love horror films. Always will. They're
Well,
fun, good scares.
that little jerk from The Watcher in the Woods really messed me up. But maybe I should give it another go. I feel like really the last actual horror film I maybe saw was probably The Ring. Probably. Like
The Ring was gnarly. The Japanese
yeah, and that's
version is
I mean
much more terrifying.
I was like 25 when it came out too. So I was scared shitless. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done.
You know what it is. I think your problem is you need to stop watching horror films with little girls as the antagonist. I
That's what
think
it is.
that's.
They scare me.
I think you need to go for like monsters or dudes.
Monsters. I think
Or
so.
just,
A
I
nice
mean, the
little
Slenderman
kaiju.
movie is awful. Well, yeah, kaiju's intense, man. Japanese horror doesn't mess around. Don't watch a Takashi Miike film unless you're looking to have your stomach turned.
I remember watching The Ring with my still best friend Dave, and he had seen it, and he knew that I didn't like horror movies, and we were high, and I guess part of the movie is you watch a movie, a
Yeah,
character in the movie watches a movie, and then receives a phone call saying that they're gonna die or something like that.
yep,
And I remember the phone rang on the TV and my phone rang exactly at the same time because he called me because my friend called. I'm just
of
like,
course.
this is I can't watch it without someone messing with me.
You got. I don't know, man. Horror isn't for everyone. I will say
No.
that. But I don't know.
I'm
There,
just a
there.
sensitive guy, Andrew. I'm just a sensitive guy.
We'll find
Uh,
something for you. We'll make it work.
okay.
I'm sure there's a weed horror film, or there'll be one soon enough. Anyway,
There's probably is one.
I
Huh.
wrote a screenplay about the zombie weed horror film a couple of years ago, but no one picked it up. Surprisingly,
That's surprising. That
it's
genre is still hot.
oh
Still
my
hot.
god. Yeah, every time they say no one's accepting scripts for zombies, they greenlight 5 more zombie projects. So
Hmm.
I don't know, but maybe I just got to get Dave Bautista involved.
Oh man, that movie I could watch 4 minutes of it and I had to turn it off. Terrible.
I have been meaning to not check it out for a while.
Don't check it out. It's terrible. I haven't read your screenplay. I guarantee you it's 10,000 times better than that movie.
I'm
I
going to
want to
remain neutral in case Netflix greenlights any future
They're
projects.
watching.
Yeah, I
They
know they
definitely
might.
watch this podcast.
You never
Um
know.
I definitely do.
Fair. All right.
Supporting oneself through art, which would, I mean, writing is for sure that. It's super challenging. Before I entered my professional career post college, but pre being a real person, I was a musician in a rock band, and we, for years traveled the country. Uh, Apples and oranges, but that idea of kind of throw inflicting pain, inflicting suffering onto yourself, because despite ambition, talent, timing, all of these things, the chances are you're not going to succeed professionally, right? That's just a lot in life. And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about artists
No,
generally,
yeah,
right? So I'm curious, and that drive is heartbreaking, right? I mean, for me, right? So now I am talking about me. Once you realize that the dream is over, that's heartbreaking. There's for sure uh, things to be learned from those experiences of subjecting oneself to uh, torture, seemingly. I'm curious your thoughts on it. You've been actually doing this professionally and making a good living off this for a while now. But I'm curious about that time before where you know um, you were pursuing your art. You were pursuing your art.
yeah. I think I don't know, it's difficult because there are a lot of people that don't succeed. It is a very small window of success. At times it felt like it was almost as minimal as trying to become a professional athlete, which is
Right. Exactly.
barely. But at the same time, now that I'm on the other side, and this is kind of what I'm trying to do with people whenever I can, is it's not as difficult as people make it out to be. I think the biggest thing is there's a saying I was reminded of recently is it's 90% business, 10% talent.
Yep.
Yeah, it's unfair that you're not that the best artist or the best writer isn't at the top of the game or isn't there, but at the end of the day, it's management. You have to manage yourself. And some people don't want to call themselves brands. They don't want to take themselves seriously in that regard. And it's like, fine, you don't have to, but it's how the business is navigated. And if you want to make it to the top or you want to make it and get involved in it, you do have to do it to a certain degree. So you have to work with your craft, but you have to learn the business. And I think that's when you were talking about it, I was kind of almost getting annoyed with it because I was thinking about like all the colleges and education
Mhm.
courses where it's like people are like, yeah, just focus on your craft and focus on creativity, which is obviously important and you have to do that. But like,
Yeah.
can we dedicate a class or even a half hour to just be like, okay, now here's how you manage your books and here's how you
Yeah.
use some of that income to actually get word of mouth marketing for yourself without selling out, like
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's ways to do it. It's just I've always likened myself to the raptors in Jurassic Park in the first movie, where it's like they throw themselves at the electric fence every day, just
Yep.
trying at different spots until they find a vulnerability to get through. And like that's it. And it's like I wish someone just was like, oh, if you go over there, that's the weak spot. Like go in there and you can do it. Because like if you look at people's talent now that you're on the other side, you're like, okay, all you need to do is maybe take one course in business management here, or just talk to an executive here, and then hone your pitches a little bit and you can start getting inroads and like
Hmm.
networking and things like that. I just feel like, that's kind of, I think there is a hard level of success in the industry and there's still, a lot of people will fail. But I think if people were given the tools on how to manage their brand or how to even just get themselves in front of the right people, there could be a lot more success to it.
I totally agree. That's such an interesting way to put it, especially your raptor analogy, which I love. Um,
My
but
next
that
tattoo.
clever girl. I respect that so much because like especially coming from maybe a slightly entitled upbringing and then trying to be an artist there for and now I'm obviously talking about myself, but there's a level of naivete, right? So not understanding that uh, practicing my scales all day doesn't put me necessarily at Madison Square Garden or whatever, right? It's
Mhm.
like there is um, there's hustle involved too. There is business like you know skills that you'll need to know. I wonder if not talking about those in college and focusing on the skills, what sort of long term effect that has. Meaning like are people more apt to quit because they can't figure out that part of it after college or whatever? Or is it hmm. Yeah,
I can
I just
see
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I could definitely see that being a part of it too. I think, there are some, not all colleges and training programs, but a lot of
Mhm.
them will just be like, it's idealistic. It's like, yeah, everyone's going to be good as long as you keep doing it. And it's like, no, some creative fields you're just not cut out for, and.
Yeah.
You won't be good at it. Or some of like you are good at it, but like here's how you deal with setback. A lot of times, again, like same thing with like money management and branding and things like that. Teach creatives how to deal with setback. I think even non-creative people need to know, here's what happens when you lose your job. Here's what happens when your money train gets derailed by, a company shutting down, or, understanding that it's not even just your fault sometimes when you lose a job. And then sometimes owning up when it is your fault and understand how to learn from that and get better. I think a lot of it is just ill preparation for artists and creatives. And, I don't know, in a broader scale, we should just improve the whole education system, maybe just to revise it to where the modern day is, because I don't know, we still teach it like it's like 50, 60 years ago.
Totally. I just read like so I grew up in Rhode Island and I just read the other day that Rhode Island is now making it mandatory that there's financial literacy classes in public school. And I, I don't know, like it never occurred to me that that should be a thing. I mean, of course it should,
Yeah.
but it just like I was just like, wow. But
I,
same idea. Like you spend all this time figuring out how to be good at something. Meanwhile, there's a million things that are actually important to that go into being good at a thing, right?
yeah.
In
And
addition to actually being good at it.
yeah, and if you had those, it would provide a foundational element. Like there's very few jobs out there where you follow a set path and that's how you get a job. Like legal, medical, maybe you can say, and then a few others. There's a pathway to it. But a lot of them, like creative, is just like, oh, it's uncertain. Just go out there. And it's like, well, if you give these people these skills, they have the foundational elements. And the worst case is they fall back and have these rudimentary job skills that will help them get jobs elsewhere, or they can find a job and support themselves and continue their art, or hopefully it helps build them and they know how to manage their brand and still be their authentic creative self or whatever direction they want to go in. Yeah, I just think providing people with more education on how to do it, which close that success failure gap a little bit. It would still be minimal of success just because there's not a ton of space or investment in there, but it's not as hard. You just got to provide the
Yeah.
education to it. So I also think people like me in my position, you got to help people when you can, give advice when
Yeah.
you can. But then also, when there's big companies and things like that, there is opportunity to make money too, and teach and consult. So, go the ethical route. If people are like financially hard up and, are in need of the education, maybe consider doing some pro bono work when you can. And then otherwise, it's actually a revenue stream for you too. And, start teaching people. A lot of people really, want to benefit from that, especially if you charge, a fair rate or at least understand the circumstances they're coming from.
100%. I got to talk to this young woman, Alexandra Fasulo, a couple weeks ago, and she's gained quite a bit of traction lately because uh, she was very successful on Fiverr. So she had all the, she left her job and just basically went to Fiverr to start copywriting, and has turned
Awesome.
that into a six-figure career,
Wow.
just freelancing. And I'm curious, kind of your perspective on that, and how how best you think creatives, writers, uh designers, whatever, can diversify themselves without kind of burning out, so it's kind of about like uh keeping your eye on the prize, right? But there, as you're getting to the prize, you're doing maybe five different things.
Yeah. So my headphone cut you out right when you said diversify, but basically you said like, how do you diversify while keeping your eye on the prize? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Surviving while trying to basically achieve your goal.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's dealing with setbacks. I got into cannabis writing in 2017, and I definitely was not able to be a full-fledged cannabis writer the first year out.
Right.
Probably took me about 2.5, 3 years before I could say I had my first month where I was 100% earning revenue from cannabis.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you got to know, that it's okay to take side projects. It's okay to, pick up stuff that might not be your most glamorous. You don't have to put on your resume. You don't have to tout it, as long as you're not doing something that's corrupt or unethical or going against what you're trying to do, you're making money, you're trying to survive, just like everyone else is. I found an avenue because I'd worked in offices prior to getting into freelance. So one of the areas I worked on was HR. So I did a lot of
Mhm.
human resources, a lot of staffing. They were not fun, they weren't glamorous, but I wrote for several platforms of management and content, packaging around them and, trying to brand them. And, it was boring and it wasn't fun, but I'm appreciative of them. I also had a few successes with foreign language companies.
Oh,
The hardest ones were tech. I'm very tech inept when it comes to things, and they would give me these primers and I would just dive into Google and have to like research them. And it was funny because the one thing I did notice was when you're doing those projects, when you're, trying to keep eye on the prize, but you have to sustain a lot of those sustained projects required so much more research because I didn't have the level of expertise that I had in cannabis. Nowadays, I can breeze through an article for the most part because I know what I'm talking about right away. But it was just
yep.
like tech, even HR that I knew a little bit of, I was just like, oh my God, I have to research this term to make sure this is right. I have to make sure that this is not just a process that I thought was normal from this company I worked at. And like
Yeah,
now
and
with that,
every vertical has its own lexicon.
oh my God, yeah. Brand Bibles out the butt. That's if you're gonna get
I
into
bet.
any sort of marketing, whether it's cannabis or otherwise, you're get ready to have some brand Bibles. You are gonna be like a religious scholar of brands by the end of that.
I'm curious about you touched upon it a little earlier, just about, okay, so I'm a good writer now. What do I do? Um, those lessons you learned kind of by throwing yourself into the fire. What are some of those lessons that maybe, some of our listeners might appreciate? Like, what are some tips to and this could be applicable to any creative person, really. It's just like, how did you market yourself in the beginning?
So there's two areas I think I would want to dive into on that. The first I'll go into marketing myself. That came a little bit after this step, so I'll do it a little bit out of order. But
Okay.
the marketing myself, the canna writer, I credit Deshita Dawson, who is a longtime cannabis advocate. She started out in Brooklyn. She's now across the U.S. and advising, I think, in other countries as well. She's heading up the social equity and civic life program in Portland, Oregon, overseeing their whole cannabis social equity program. Um, Basically, same place where I met you, actually, at a Canna Gather event.
Yeah, yeah.
She was, I think it was the second Canna Gather event I ever went to, second or third, really early back in the day. This is back before the New York marketing events really had, hundreds of people showing up to each one. So this is maybe a 50-person event at a
Yep.
400-person seater. So I got to sit up close, and Deshita, she had at the time, her brand was the Weed Head, and she still has that, and she's diversified into a few other ones as well. But she said, it's like you got to get something that's going to get people to notice you. You have to,
Yeah.
let people know right away what you are and what you want to do. And I was about 5 months into freelancing at that point, 3 months into knowing I wanted to work in cannabis. And I just started toying around on Instagram with like names that I could try out. And eventually I got the cannabis writer. And then when I went on Twitter, the cannabis writer was taken. And the first thing she said was make sure you have a cohesive brand across all platforms if you can.
Yep.
And so I went to go do it, and I was like, all right, let's play around with it. And I was like, oh, the Canna writer. And then I double checked it on Twitter, got that. And now I have that. I just added on TikTok, which is like an avenue I never thought I'd be exploring, but is now a new place to get my articles out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so branding in that regards, that was where it all started. It was Deshita. Deshita Dawson is awesome. She's a great mind in the space, and I had worked in branding and stuff before, but there was a disconnect because I just thought it's cannabis, it's freelance, it's different than the office life, but it really wasn't. And it was the same thing. So establish a cohesive brand. If anyone, you can still do it in cannabis. A lot of the puns are taken and things like that and stuff are gone, but
Yep.
you can find different ones. Do that. And you also, just with the way shadow banning is still going on Instagram and social media
Yeah.
platforms, you may even want to create a backup account for everything. So
Definitely.
maybe have a top two. But the other thing that I was going to say that I took over from the office life that I think, as a tip for a writer, being a good
Yep.
writer, besides just a cohesive brand, which also, by the way, cohesive brand includes making a website. Definitely just get a website and work on that and link that all up. It's much more nuanced than
I'll
that,
link
but
a
make
great
sure.
company below that does that in the
Yeah,
description.
there we go. Yeah. But the other thing that's really important, and I think was the key to me, was I previously was working at a company called Anco, which was a freelance backend management company. And at that company, I was doing one of the three jobs I was doing for them was partnership management. So it was really where I got thrown into doing cold email outreach. And I think this is actually a testament to your side jobs that, might not be the focus that you're looking into, is try to take away the experiences and the lessons that are beneficial from that job and how it could actually benefit you as a freelance brand.
Totally.
One of the big things I learned there was how to just create partnerships through cold email. I'd never had to do cold email before working at Anco, and I was doing I would say probably about 200 to 400 emails a month, just trying to reach out to companies through various types of partnerships we were doing and taking phone calls and things like that. So basically, I knew I was going to get laid off from the company. It was kind of writing on the wall was coming. So I was preparing for everything, and I didn't have everything in order when I did get laid off. But one of the things I knew right away was I'm going to take this same cold email outreach strategy and just start blasting the hell out of any company that I think could use my service in the cannabis space. And what I did was I targeted member directories of organizations that publicly list all their companies. Like
Sure.
NCIA is really great. They have, and
Yep.
NCIA will break them down into their like metals categories, like bronze, silver, gold, platinum, I think it is.
Yep.
And basically, that's how you know who has the most money. You can look in that
Yeah.
and say, like, okay, they're willing to spend X amount of dollars to be a platinum member here. If you're qualified and you can present a package that shows them what they can get in the return on working with you, they can do it. So that's what I started doing. I started pitching to businesses and publications at the same time using that same cold email strategy. So I think basically, to kind of get back to what a writer needs to learn from that is, take some business tips. Even if you hate business, even if you
Totally.
think it's something you don't want to do, it's essential. And if you don't do it, you're not going to end up succeeding as a writer as much as you can. And here's like the unfortunate fact: you're going to end up using those skills at a job that doesn't apply to writing because they're almost applicable to every job.
Yeah.
So you might as well give it a shot. And you can always, once you reach a level of success, automate those roles off to people. It will take time to do that. But if you learn those skills now, you'll eventually generate the success and the money to eventually have other people handle those things for you so you can go back to focusing and creating.
I love that so much. It's so true too. Like when I first started this company, it was 100% outbound, right? And
Yep.
then if you do your job well, that number becomes 80% inbound, right? Well, so as
Absolutely.
you grow, that number shifts to inbound. Now we're at a point where the inbound has, is still chugging along, but we're doing that cold outreach, right? We're going back to old school sales techniques. And the cool thing about being creative people is that uh, we can come up with strategies that are probably more interesting than the other
Exactly.
5,000 cold emails that businesses get, you know, weekly.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think
well,
the key to that. So, sorry, are you gonna say?
no, no, no. I was just gonna say, let's exchange cold email tips.
Yeah,
Let me hear what you got first. Like
so for
what was the one thing you found um worked
do
for you?
not be, do not be formulaic. Like, you can have a template, but if your template doesn't at least have one or two massive areas for customization to show that you actually research the company, you're
Mhm.
very rarely going to book business. If you don't mention, reading some articles recently in a publication that were good, or if you're going to pitch, like if you're pitching article, okay, so put it this way, because we'll approach from two different ways. If you're pitching publications, if you're
Mhm.
not mentioning recent articles that were put out there and actually showing that you read them and actually gave a damn about them, or if you're not reading and checking the site to see if they've covered the topic that you're pitching and at least recognizing or acknowledging how you're going to build off it, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. It's
Yep.
they get pitched so much that if they see that you're just like, hey, I'm blah 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 and I want to work for your publication, if you can't put some customization to show that you read into it, it really shows you don't really have an eye for detail to really kind of get in there. And that applies to business as well. But with business,
Yes.
it's a little different. You can mention if there's a blog and things like that for sure. The thing that I've always succeeded at, because content marketing is my crux, is the first one I look for is if you have a blog. If you don't have a blog or if it hasn't been updated recently, I say like, hey, that's the bread and butter I do. I work with that. And here's how. What I also then do is say like, here's how I help with it. I've worked in SEO firms. I can show you the keyword optimization. If you need those lists, I can help you get them. If you have a list, I'm great at putting those keywords in. But let's also talk about your content funnel. Let's talk about how you can repurpose this content to be used on your social media, how this can be used on different channels. And basically, one thing that I wanted from my side was making sure that they understood that it wasn't just a blog post. Because
Yeah.
if you look at it as just a blog post, I am expensive, 100%. And what a
Yeah.
writer should charge is going to be looking like an expensive rate. The job of the writer
Mhm.
when pitching to a brand is not only looking at the company and seeing what they need and customizing to it, but then also showing them what the value is to it. And by saying like, hey, I noticed that you have a blog. It hadn't been updated since April 15th. If you're looking for more consistent writing, I can help you out with that. But also my writing, I would be able to help you out, with SEO optimization and how we might be able to use this content to be purposed on social media to help your inbound marketing. You say a couple sentences like that, string it together and actually know what you're talking about and put it into implementation. The companies will then be more inclined to want to work with you on that project, and you'll probably end up start booking retaining deals sooner than later.
That's perfect. In fact, that was, you said more
That was a
words
long
than I was.
tip, but
That was a long tip. It was exactly the one I was going to say too. It's really the first cold email should have nothing to do with you.
yeah,
It should be, I
two,
saw
three
this.
sentences at most or less.
Yeah, I saw this thing. I read this article. Congrats on this award. I saw this LinkedIn post you did. It resonated with me because why?
Yep.
Uh, uh, and that's it,
Yep.
right?
And
And
then ask if you want to have a phone call in the next week or two.
totally, it's all about the consistency, the brevity. Because you're right, being able to, especially as the owner of a company, like, man, the
How
amount of
many
cold
emails
call.
a day do you get?
Oh, I mean, 100 for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing that always stops me, even if I know, you know, oh man, this is a SEO company on the other side of the planet, or like I'm probably not going to work with these guys, but they're using tools like Vidyard now, or so like a video tool. So they're that personal touch. It's starting to come in like through all levels of spam inbound.
Hmm.
But that's it. Like that personal touch, showing that you like resonated with a thing that company does. Um, Period. That's it. Send.
Yeah.
The next follow up is that thing I saw made me think about this.
Yep.
And
Oh
here's
yeah.
the problem I found.
And have your follow-ups. Yeah, that's a whole other game. Everyone's got a different strategy for those. I hate the aggressive follow-ups. Some people love those follow-ups. So I would say, yeah, once you be sure to have your own strategy and kind of toy with it and implement it. But like you just said, that's a great next step to it. And then kind of tweak it from there. My favorite is then, the third one. I usually get no success on the second email I found out. And it's usually the third one where I was like, okay, now's not a great time. Totally understand. I was cold emailing you. I'm going to stop bothering you now. Here's a link to my latest book. Here's my portfolio and here's my LinkedIn, and contact me whenever you'd like. And that is actually where I've generated a lot of success is my third
Yeah,
email.
totally. That's the one too. So like we have so we've got a sales team, our at CannaPlanners. There's a strategic outbound uh, strategy. Is that redundant or what? There is a outbound strategy that we've thought out. um, but it's like cold email, second email, social touch, LinkedIn touch, call,
Yep.
call, call, email, social, call. Um, but the thing that you just made me think of, and this is a big part of what I try to always talk about in this podcast, which is like the uncomfortability with certain aspect of business and even especially entrepreneurship, like putting yourself into situations that you normally wouldn't find yourself in, right? Like even sending a cold email, like it feels weird, right? Like why does this
Oh yeah.
person want to hear from me? They don't know me from anybody. Like what do I like that sort of thing is like that's a cancer in the mind of an entrepreneur. How did you get past all that aside from like well me first. So for me it was purely survival. Like I was
Yeah.
CannaPlanners happened pretty quickly, meaning like I had a job and then I didn't, and then CannaPlanners. you know
Yeah. Very similar. Very
it was
similar.
kind of that. So it was purely a let's address the elephant in the room. You live in New York City.
Yeah.
Your
I
apartment is
tried.
slightly bigger than your body. That's a Mike
Yeah.
Birbiglia joke. It's 400 degrees in your apartment.
Yeah, I'm trying. I got glistening cheeks right
It's
now,
okay.
man. It's
I just wanted to address it so people
I
don't think
appreciate it. Yeah.
it's weird.
I'm I'm like dabbing off like a stressed southern gentleman right
This
now.
is
I
part of living in New York. You don't
Yeah.
you want to die in the summers.
And while recording, my fan made just enough noise. I was like, I can't have this or it's gonna ruin recording. So I'm gonna shine on
Turn the
right now.
fan on. No one's watching anyway.
No, we'll make it work. We'll make it work. I'm committed to this. But no,
um
I think
yeah,
you are
so
right though
so, so
about
those
back to the
early
wall though.
fear, right, those early fears of there's either I'm being thrown into this, or I'm interested in this, but I'm reticent because I'm self-conscious about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I mean, if you're self-conscious of it, I'm gonna be blunt, you're gonna have to get over it or you're not gonna succeed. It's it's
You're
just
being
that type
blunt.
of industry.
Talk more because I think you're absolutely right.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to do this. I wouldn't have followed this path if I didn't have to. But yeah, survival. I always say I do my best when my back's up against the wall.
Totally.
Like
Most people do.
the last few months, I haven't hit my goal of sending out. Like I still do a lot of outbound. Even though I get good word of mouth, outbound I like to do because it helps me expand my reach in the industry, and it gives
That's
me
where I'm going.
confidence. Honestly, yeah, and it gives me more confidence too when I find companies that I didn't think otherwise would have reached out. I recently worked with a dispensary in Ohio that never would have found me otherwise. So it's fun. I like it. It's a good booster. Um, I didn't want to do it originally, but I did it because my back was against the wall. If I didn't succeed, and I was using Upwork and stuff, and I was using a couple other models, and really it just wasn't working. And if I didn't find business in the next 3 months, I was going to have to go back to finding a full-time office job because I just wasn't going to be able to survive and live in New York at that point. So I embraced the outreach. I did it. It's not fun at first. It's awkward.
Yeah.
But I would say it's just like anything. The more you do it, the more, as long as you do it right and you don't come at it from it's a disrespectful, uninformed, stupid sort of approach,
Yeah.
you got a chance to succeed. You got a chance to do well, and you'll learn from your mistakes and do better. It's like, honestly, it's like dating, to be honest. It's go out there
It really
and
is. Yeah.
approach it fair, approach it respectful, try to learn a bit about the person. A lot of times it's not going to work out, but you will succeed at times. And just keep trying and learn from your mistakes and do better at it.
Andrew Ward, good for you. Keep trying, buddy.
And as I note in the book, I'm a 35-year-old man living in New York without a relationship, so I don't know shit about that aspect of what I'm talking about. But I
You're
can make
doing
the
something
analogy.
right, though.
I can make the analogy.
Well, it's a good analogy though. It's absolutely like that. It's there's some weirdness in the approach, just like there is in the dating scene. You usually fumble over your words a few times. You usually have a pitch
Yeah,
for both.
everyone's got an elevator pitch on both sides.
You got an elevator pitch, you got a one liner, whatever it is. But I think like it really is like that. I think that's I mean, I've never once thought of like made that connection, but yeah, it's a weird thing. And you're only going to be good. You're only going to get better the more you do it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
especially the things you don't want to do.
Hmm. Yeah, and a lot of times you're going to say, this company has no interest in, hearing from me and sort of stuff like that. And, figure out how you can get them to want to work with you, and sometimes they have no interest and walk away if they don't. But, a lot of times I like reaching out to companies that seem like they have no shot or interest in reaching out to me or and hearing from me. And, I'll tell them it's like, you might not be interested. If that's the case, I'll stop emailing you in a week or two. But I've had a lot of those companies will look at it and say, like, let's set up a phone call and let's talk about it and at least see, if we can work together. And
Those are
it
the
it
wins.
never hurts to try. At most, you're sending like
No,
3 emails over the course of a month or however your strategy is, and you go from there. It's not hard. It doesn't take effort, and it could turn into a living.
absolutely. 100%. Um, your first book, Cannabis
Yeah,
Jobs, How to Make a Living and Have a Career in the World of Legalized Marijuana, is very appropriate for this podcast since that's what we talk about
yeah,
almost always. Not only having a job, but potentially making a career for yourself or building a business. Uh, we definitely talk about employment here, hugely important. But and people always ask me, and I'm sure they ask you, how do I get into the cannabis business, industry? I
just a
hear
few
that.
times.
Yeah, I hear that exact word for word question all the time. How do people get into the cannabis industry?
Uh, Show up. That's the first rule: is show
Mhm.
up. Attend events. Now that the world is getting back to it, go to local interest meetings.
I cannot wait to go to events, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an introvert. I have not really missed not going to as many. I would have liked to have gone to some, so it
Mhm,
is nice to start doing that again. But, go to the digital events too, reach
mhm.
out, still attend these sort of things. That's always the big one. But then it's a wide open field. It depends on the career path you want to get into. If you have experience in another profession, you probably can bring it over here. Depending on the demand of the state and the market, that'll vary a little bit. But everyone from C-suite executives to cultivation to processing and so many others, they're all in demand. So there's an opportunity there. Um, College courses are starting to come online more. There's a few majors. There's a lot more minors and select courses you can take, which Cannabis Jobs is a part of in Stockton University. So that's a cool little thing that I never would have thought would happen.
That's totally
So
awesome.
yeah, it's weird. I've spoke to a
You're in a
college 3 semesters
curriculum,
ago.
dude.
No idea what I'm doing when I speak to those people. I appreciate it. They say it's helpful. I would probably hate it, but okay. Yeah, it works. They say it helps.
Dude, I've
But yeah,
I've been I've been a guest lecturer at a couple universities in Vermont, because cannabis, and it is a weird thing. It is definitely a weird thing.
man, it's nuts to do those sort of things. Like I feel like that is one of the more surreal ones. It's like asked to be at a lecture. I was like, I was a C student, man. I don't
I'm an
know.
idiot.
Yeah, like I mean, I can navigate writing and running a freelance business. Outside of that, I don't know. So sure, okay, I'll come in and talk to you. But like that's another thing it's a testament to. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world to succeed. You just have to be really good and hardworking and open-minded to succeed. I mean, don't try to be a doctor with that mentality, but you could definitely
No.
be a digital, you could definitely be a digital writer.
Yeah, don't be a doctor, please.
Yeah. But also, hey, if you want to do it from a social media management perspective, or there's a lot of different areas that you can do it in. Just kind of come with it from an open mind. You do need to be smart, or at least wise to a certain degree, but just be hardworking, open-minded, ask questions, and be nice to people as best as you can. Don't let people step on you, but be nice to people.
Absolutely. Especially in this industry, man. Like it's still so nascent, but I remember like when you and I first met at a Canna Gather, um, that was like one of those experiences for me where it was like, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to step out of the cannabis closet and kind of show, wave my flag in the real world for the night and see how that, and lo and behold, there's a community there. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people making that first step when you go to your first event. You're not alone. You're definitely
No.
not alone there.
Yeah, although I will say now there's starting to become more and more people. So get in if you can now, because it's the interest is peaking, it feels like. I mean, it'll still grow, but
Yeah,
that influx, it's not as unique to see a room full of newcomers. It's, now you see maybe half of the room is full of newcomers or even less. So there are a lot more veteran faces, but that's also
hmm,
the fun thing to start showing up to events, because then you'll start to realize like who in the room is, the ones to know, or,
yeah,
who are the, the really good people, or who are the ones that, might have more idealistic business or advocacy goals than what they're actually putting into work. And, you'll see a little bit of the lip service, and, you'll start to figure out what is, the market, because cannabis is taking shape. And even back when we first met, it was, but now it's just amplified to, I don't know, 10,
totally,
20 fold. And it's only going to grow more and more as New York
easily,
legalizes and the rest of the country does.
totally. I think back to those times, and it seems like it's like dog years. Like 1 year in the cannabis industry is like 7 years in the real world or whatever. But
Oh,
um,
yeah.
y- y- like, and so much has happened. But the idea of people like you and I who had a skill set that, for all intents and purposes, had nothing to do with cannabis, but we were able to recognize the need in this industry that we knew we wanted to be in, no matter what. We weren't going to grow plants. I kill plants. We weren't going to, build dispensaries or whatever, but we could do this one skill that we knew would be helpful in the industry.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I love that it's just it's such a romantic tale. I interviewed Tito Byrne, who is the head of the Byrne Gallery, which is a glass shop in Burlington, Vermont, and he said something to me at the time that was just like so shocking, which was, "Don't do what you love, do what you're good at, and apply it to what you love." And I was like, "Damn, man, that sounds controversial, but it's not at all. Don't do what you
Yeah.
love, or else you're gonna be like me, and you're gonna be heartbroken when you realize that you suck at what you love."
I mean, try it what you love, but if you got to be realistic about it, you don't ever have to give up what you love, and you could
Right.
succeed later on, but like, don't stunt yourself because of it. Like we're, going back even to the other jobs, you can take a job that has nothing that applies to what you're looking to do, as long as you don't give up on what your end game is, and that's the
Totally.
tough thing. And a lot of people do get sidetracked. And that was one thing that like made me depressed early on out of college, because I graduated from the recession, and it was like, I'm working for Enterprise Rent a Car. I have no idea what kind of writing I want to do. I haven't written a script in years, and this was the one thing that I thought I was doing at the time. And it beat me up after a while, but then I pulled myself out of it and I started writing for a blog. And that was the first step to realizing I wanted to get back into writing. It took 4 years from there. Actually, no, it took 5, 6 years to get back from there to getting into paid writing and cannabis and stuff like that. So, it's incremental. And
Yeah.
do what you love for sure. And if you're not getting paid for it, you can work on it. But
Yep.
maybe, yeah, do something you're good at too along the way, or at least something that's going to be good at paying you money.
Definitely. Most
Yeah.
importantly. You are the second guest that we've had to discuss cannabis etiquette. The
Sweet.
first was Lizzie Post, who is a etiquette expert
Yeah.
who applied her expertise to cannabis. I would say that you're a cannabis expert,
Definitely
applying,
not an etiquette expert.
trying to identify proper etiquette. Can what drew you to this topic? Here's the book, by the way. We will link it in. It is a beautiful book. I
Yeah,
read
thank you.
it in like an afternoon the other day.
No, thanks.
So it was a good read. Um, what drew you to that?
My publisher, to be
There you
completely
go.
honest. Yeah,
Here's
so
here's a
I
hot topic.
yeah, yeah. Well, that was cannabis jobs too. Like I said, I did not follow the traditional writing route. Um, I didn't pitch the books. I would love to have done that. It's time consuming. I just never had the time or the money to sacrifice to do that. and
Mhm.
I was never a great book writer, so I just kind of assumed it was never going to happen. So Skyhorse reached out to me about cannabis jobs. We're finishing up cannabis jobs, and they mentioned etiquette as well. And the way they wanted to do the etiquette book was actually in the style of Emily Post, in
Mhm.
the more that grand Victorian,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
old era. Well, I think it was a Lizzie's
Lizzie
great
beat you to
grandmother.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
that was the funny thing about it. Was no, they wanted to go like more character driven than even that, where it was like, we're gonna do this voice. And I tried. I spent a month and a half outlining this thing, and we worked back and forth on it. And the first day I went to write it, I was just like, this feels fake as hell. And
yeah.
honestly, it was like, it's gonna either be a really stupid book if I have to follow this, and you're gonna hate it, or I'm just gonna feel like a shill, and I'm gonna quit cannabis because people are gonna make fun of me for this book. Um, and credit to my editors at Skyhorse, they were open to it. And I was just like, look, why don't you just let me write the book as someone who's worked in the New York cannabis scene for the last 4 years and has smoked weed since they were 18, and knows a thing or two about the industry from one way or another. And they ran with it. And yeah, we went with that. And the funny thing is, we were writing the book, and we just finished the first fast pass of the book. I just handed
Mhm.
it in, or somewhere around that time. And that's when they found out that Lizzie was writing her book. And they're like, yeah, so this is happening. And we kind of went into a hold pattern until we can get a hold of higher etiquette, I think it's called, right?
Yep.
And yeah, and we read it, and it's a great book. People should definitely
Yeah.
check it out. It's a different take, but thankfully we already knew we had a different style to what we were going to put in there. Like, there was going to be some general rules that would overlap, but we knew that Lizzie was coming from a different perspective of the cannabis community, and a different level of expertise from etiquette, obviously.
Yeah,
So we kind of
exactly.
just yeah, so we just kind of doubled down on that. It made it even more so for me able to tap into some of the areas in the book that I don't think a lot of cannabis etiquette, like blog posts or books, talk about. So I really ramped up talking about
Yeah,
respecting
they're for
nature,
sure
sex,
different
dating.
books. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely
So
different books.
yeah, so I recommend picking up Lizzie's, but we just tried to be a little different from her. And yeah, it kind of was a unique process to how it all came along.
That's awesome. I mean, here it is. It's beautiful. Good work. It's
Thank you.
fun to have a physical thing, right? It's
Yeah,
still a good
it's
feeling. It's not just out on a Kindle.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everyone asks about getting it on a Kindle. It's like, okay, go for it. I don't use a Kindle, not because I'm like some Brooklyn tech hipster. It's more just I like holding a book, and
Yeah,
it's fun. It's nice. I have a bookshelf, and I have my books
there's
on the
books
front of the
on it.
shelf. Yeah, and it's my two of them are mine. So it's like, cool. All
Yeah,
right, this is
that's
this is
awesome.
fun.
I
Yeah,
have a bookshelf. I have a bookshelf too, Andrew, with books on it, and also two of them are yours. So,
sweet. Thank you. I hope more people can say that soon. It's
well, we're
it's a
gonna
fun
link them in the
talking piece.
description, and we'll definitely hopefully get some people to buy the book.
I
Um,
appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
was there a particular challenge, like just something that like you couldn't figure out in working through the book?
Beside honestly, the voice was definitely the toughest part. I just once I got past the authenticity block, it really wasn't hard. There were through edits, we were moving rules around. There were some areas where there's a lot of overlap. You'll even see there's some kind of redundant rules in some sections, just because you know they're the same rule, but there's one little tweak to them that for
Right.
guests and hosts. So like you couldn't put them in one chapter or other. So it was more just logistically trying to figure out where to put each thing. And then, of course, it was just trying to make sure we covered everything.
Hmm.
I haven't gotten a ton of feedback yet, but I'm sure there's people going to be saying, we definitely missed slang. We definitely missed some rules. Didn't cover a certain perspective. So we just tried to make sure we covered as much as we could. And Jason let me do much of that, my editor at Skyhorse, and then he filled in the gaps. He was pretty informed about the cannabis community as well, so he gave some good ones that weren't there, and then relied on the industry as well and got some insights from friends and writers and other folks in the space, and kind of helped round it out. So it was a challenge, but nothing that was too out of the reach. Especially, I would say after what cannabis jobs was, where it was just so much interviewing and
Yeah.
transcribing and turning it into an article. It felt like it was a lot more labor intensive. Cannabis marijuana etiquette was a little bit longer of a period of time to write it, and it was a little bit more of a fun process. So the challenges felt like small hurdles really.
Well, it's awesome. I hope you sell a million of them. I really do.
Thanks.
There's there's one chapter in here that I'd like to discuss as we
Let's.
pull this podcast to a close. It is the how to roll a joint.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if I can, I'm gonna try to move my camera without totally screwing this up. I'm gonna roll it on your book
All right.
because that's the dream. When I first put out I put out a bunch of albums in my musical life. Hi, and one of the best feelings is rolling a joint on your own album or book. All right, I guess that's the best I can do with this. Sorry, there's my hand. You're gonna see. We're gonna edit all this shit out.
It's cool, man. It's a unique POV.
I'm gonna get it. There it is. Okay. So got my book. I've got a little material here.
Nice, nice, good material.
I don't mess around. I don't know what it is.
All right.
Okay. I am a terrible joint roller. I grinded up the weed. Ground? The weed is grinded. The weed is now
It's grinded.
pieces. It's grounded and grinded.
Grund.
What's my next I got should I use the tips?
So I will
tip or no tip?
I crutch the hell out of it. I'm gonna need every little bit of help I can get when rolling a joint.
Have you ever instructed how to roll a joint over Zoom before?
I haven't. No,
Cool.
I'm trying to actually find my joint rolling implements just to show you what I usually do. I have a grinder that automatically has a pour spout and then it goes into a one hitter. And this is my joint because I'm shit at rolling
because
joints.
you're a techie hipster from Brooklyn.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is just the perk of working in the industry. The company sent me this. It's awesome. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Go work in weed. They'll send you a lot of cool products.
Seriously, they will.
Yeah. So I will help you roll a joint, but I am
Let's do
terrible at it. My editor made me put the rolling tips in there, and I was like, I don't think that's etiquette, and I'm not good at this. And he's like, do it anyway. I was like, okay, fuck, we're gonna try.
Well, it's gonna either make for really good or really crappy content right now.
Cool. All right, great. So you are going to put your folded up cardboard into the one end of the folded paper, and that'll be your crutch. Yes, that's going to be your crutch. Just put that into the crease for now, I would say.
Okay.
So yeah, this is gonna be bad, man. So what you're gonna do is with the crutch in the crease, you're then gonna take your ground weed and modestly put that into the crease as well, filling up most of the line, leaving a little bit of space at the end so you can twist up the paper.
All right.
So don't overfill it because then it'll make rolling tough. Yeah, and then even it out so that where your crutch is, the flower starts, and then you get kind of like an even line all the way through. And if you have an excess, kind of pour that back into the grinder, just so you have a nice even full line, but that it's not going to burst.
Yeah.
All right. So now this is where I've never been good at it. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your paper and you're going to fold it. So you're gonna start rolling it. So you have the sticky side of the paper, and then you have the non-sticky side. Yes, take the non-sticky side and roll it until with the contents inside until you get to a little bit of space with the sticky side, and then you're going to lick it like you would an envelope, and then fold that paper tight. So you're gonna start twisting that. Yeah. So you're gonna take that non-sticky side of the paper and start rolling your flour into a tight but not too tight tube, kind of like you'd be rolling a cigarette.
I think I actually got this.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. See, I usually have confidence until I'm done, and then it all falls out because I was too loose. Yeah, it gets too loose. So you want to make it tight, but not too tight that you can't pull.
I got a little.
But if you make it too loose,
is that okay?
I think let's say it is. Let's say it is. This is why I say everyone should have a bowl. But let's go for this and see what happens. All right. So now you're going to not soak it, but you're going to lick the sticky side like you would an envelope, and then you're going to fold that over onto the joint, making sure it's a tight but not too tight cone around it. All right, and then last thing you want to do is just twist up the excess paper at the top. So pat that down if you have any pot in there, and then twist that up, and then you should be able to light it. And if this is what's going to determine if you want to buy my book or not, you're not going to buy my book because this is a terrible advice.
Buy this guy's book. I suck at rolling joints, and look at how good that joint is.
Buy my book, but not based on any of my rolling skills, because that is the worst advice you'll get. Definitely unauthentic. How'd that look? Okay, that's not bad. I think you're a lot better at it than my tips were, but I'm gonna say
Maybe.
yeah. I'm gonna say sure. I'll hang my
Maybe
hat
for the
on this for
sake
this.
of content, I lied and said I never rolled a joint before. But I'm
Maybe.
glad you walked me through it because now I feel more confident in it.
Yeah, that looks a lot better than I've ever done. So it might be just some, behind the scenes magic there. But yeah. Other
It's
than
like
that, I'll say a lot of the advice is good.
it's like a cooking show. We had the ready made already go.
Yeah.
I did the swap out. That's what they call it, the swap out.
It's nice. It was smooth, man. It was smooth. I got to learn from you how to do that.
Andrew Ward, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for helping me roll a joint, which I'm now going to go enjoy. Tell the people listening where they can find you, where they can engage with you.
Yeah, well, Will, thanks for having me. It was great catching up with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you can follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and I'm also going to be launching on TikTok at the Canna Writer, on all those. If you feel like you want to send me any tips or anything, you can visit my website, iamandrewward.com. Just visit the contact page and you'll be emailing me directly. Yeah, we can start talking about stories. But yeah,
Awesome.
thanks for the support, and I hope you enjoy the book if you pick it up.
Andrew, it's been a pleasure talking to you. The book again is called It's Covered in Pot.
As it should be.
The Art of Marijuana Etiquette, a sophisticated guide to the high life. The author is Andrew Ward. He's been our guest today, and I appreciate him very much. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We will see you next time. I'm going to go get down on this. Bye.